Recently, I made a video game purchase that left me feeling a bit duped. A game that, despite being available for the latest, greatest systems, was developed, marketed, and sold under the pretense that it would be playable on older hardware, only to discover that it ran unreasonably poorly, something the official marketing conveniently hid. I am, of course, speaking of Call of Duty Black Ops 3, which released in August of 2015. Not only for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC, but also for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, both of which were near a decade old at the time. On the surface, this was nothing new. Call of Duty hadn't quite fallen from grace yet, and Activision was still pushing out something resembling each year's game on every console they could. The Wii and DS got compromised versions of Black Ops and Modern Warfare 3, and even the Wii U saw a couple of CODs before Activision joined the rest of us in giving up hope. But by 2015, the writing was well and truly on the wall for the 7th generation consoles. By the time Black Ops 3 released, the PS4 and Xbox One had 2 holiday seasons and a price cut each under their belts, and most devs and publishers had finally left their predecessors behind. Despite this, Activision was uniquely motivated to dust off the old dev kits one last time. Call of Duty was perhaps the most defining game of the 7th generation, and Black Ops 2 was considered by many to be the last good game in the series. The last time the franchise had a clear idea of what it wanted to be. As far as all the teens and adults still rocking these systems were concerned, Black Ops 3 was the most promising game of 2015, and it was pretty much guaranteed to outsell everything short of 2K, FIFA, and Madden. But there was a problem. Despite gags about Call of Duty lagging behind the technical curve since 2011, Black Ops 3 was shaping up to be somewhat challenging to run, if for the wrong reasons. Treyarch's idea of next-gen shine was taken a bit literally, and the speed of advanced mobility meant that consoles would have to work harder to render it all smoothly. Black Ops 3 certainly isn't what I'd call cutting edge, even for 2015, but it certainly surpasses what I'd accuse the 360 and PS3 of being able to cough out at playable frame rates. Activision's habitual overworking and abuse of Treyarch is well documented, and suffice it to say that Black Ops 3's development was not easygoing enough to justify a detour to Grandma and Grandpa's. So, as is commonplace with this sort of game, external teams were brought aboard to coax the vague idea of Black Ops 3 onto the old consoles. The first studio shouldn't come as a surprise. Beenox had been an Activision studio for basically its entire life. Ironically responsible for the B-movie game, Beenox had since done a fair amount of supportive work for other Activision studios, and even ported Treyarch's Quantum of Solace to the PC and Wii. But Black Ops 3 was their first AAA project. Lucky winner number 2 was none other than Mercenary Technology, a studio that, despite being a lesser-known name, had a much more impressive library of work. Unlike Beenox, Mercenary's portfolio consists primarily of port work for well-known and respected games and franchises. The PS3 version of Kingdoms of Amalur, the handheld ports of the God of War games, and crucially, developmental support for Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified, a PS Vita exclusive that repurposed most of its assets and systems from the original Black Ops. Mercenary is no Sumo Digital, but overall, their ports were decent, and Beenox did better work than most would expect from a company almost entirely responsible for Toys to Life and movie tie-ins. Both studios clearly knew their way around 7th gen hardware, and you could certainly pick worse teams to squish a PS4-shaped block into a PS3-shaped hole. Which makes it all the more apparent that something went very, very wrong behind the scenes during the production of this game. I'll spare you the details of my distaste for Treyarch Call of Duty games, but suffice it to say I was very disappointed by Black Ops 3 when it came out. Things I felt Black Ops 1 and 2 did do right, namely their art direction and themes, were cast aside in favor of one of the most boring sci-fi aesthetics I've ever seen, and a story that has absolutely nothing to do with the Black Ops lore. The first 2 Black Ops campaigns tangled conspiracy theory fiction with real-world figures and events. Rather than delve back into the life of times of Woods, Mason, and Hudson, Black Ops 3 skips 40 years into the future to tell a tale of... I don't know. I actually don't know what the fuck this game is about. I've read the plot summary like 6 times, and the most coherent thing I can say about it is that reality is fake and Treyarch's lead writers would definitely get along with George Lucas. It feels like Treyarch didn't want to tell a story in the Black Ops universe. Black Ops 3 was clearly called Black Ops 3 solely because of name recognition. But let's back up for a second. This video is about the PS3 and 360 version of the game, which renders all discussion of the campaign completely moot. This full-price version of Black Ops 3 only had multiplayer and zombies, no campaign. You know what? Fair. Most COD players don't touch the COD campaigns, and those who do probably wouldn't want to play this one anyway. And after seeing how multiplayer runs on PS3, I doubt the campaign would be even remotely playable. The only issue is that the game still cost a whopping $60, despite objectively existing less than the full version in more than one way. But hold that thought. Let's talk about zombies first. Let me get this out of the way. I hate Call of Duty Zombies. I think it's the most boring, tedious game mode in the series' history. I'm not a zombie fan in general, but COD Zombies always felt antithetical to my reasons for playing Call of Duty. I've always been a fan of fast-paced, low time-to-kill PvP games, even those developed by Treyarch. But going around a friend's house on a Black Ops launch day, as was tradition, always came with the tax of having to play through Zombies mode at least once. This tangent isn't really going anywhere. I just like prompting people to call me uncorrect. But it's also a disclaimer that my take on Black Ops 3 Zombies on PS3 is going to be surface level and brief. And if there's some grand reason why this is actually the definitive Call of Duty Zombies experience, please feel free to call me a jackass in the comments. Okay, so observations. There's only one Zombies map on disc. Granted, there's a whole lot more going on here than in the old days, but it's still just one map. The 8th gen versions added heaps of content through DLC, but on the old consoles, the only DLC available is the Giant map and Awakening. And while I'm not about to blow $20 more on this game, I'd hazard a guess that nobody plays these. That said, I was shocked when my search for a public Shadows of Evil session revealed a whopping 41 active games, at 7 PM on a Wednesday no less. From what I could tell, the game runs fine. It's not pretty, and it runs at half the frame rate of the PS4 version, but yeah, this sure is COD Zombies. I didn't really know what was going on, I just kind of wandered around and knifed Zeds, got spooked by my teammates turning into Cthulhu, without any significant hitches, except this one time when I got disconnected and my character started somersaulting in place. Listen, I may not like zombies, but I do get the appeal. I do have to say it's pretty cool that so many people hanging on to the PlayStation 3 are still down to play the same zombie map they've been playing since 2015. But this version of the game is still anywhere from $10 to $20, has one map on disc, and the DLC still goes for full price. Tally that up and you can pick up all 4 games for cheaper. If you really are well and truly married to your 7th gen consoles, the first 2 games have a much larger pool of DLC to choose from, and likely have larger player bases. All that in mind, and I'd easily rule this as the second dumbest way to buy into Call of Duty Zombies behind paying full retail on Steam. But that is not why I bought this game. The real meat of the last gen Black Ops 3 experience is the PvP multiplayer, and going into this port blind, I expected it to just be a worse version of a game I was already not too hot on. By now, I've likely telegraphed that I'm not the biggest fan of Black Ops 3, but after both its sequel and World War II hit new lows, returning to Black Ops 3 was actually not that bad. A ringing endorsement, I know, but bear with me. Not only could I hold my own pretty damn well, but I found myself not completely hating elements that turned me off when the game was new. The advanced movement and wall running feel much better than I remember, topping even the original Titanfall. And the specialist abilities, while still completely unnecessary, were fun to use within the bounds of Team Deathmatch. That's the thing, though, I couldn't play other modes to see how they held up because the entire player bases hold up in the TDM playlist. This is kind of just what happens to old shooters. TDM is the simplest mode to understand and one that almost nobody dislikes. And as previously discussed, the lack of a server browser means that putting together a match of anything else entails a lot of patience that might not even pay off. Somehow, this version of the game does feature some surprisingly intelligent bots that can play basically any traditional mode in the game, but it won't give you the true feel of the mode. Still, this isn't solely a Black Ops 3 problem, but believe me, there are plenty of things here that are. First, the technicalities. I've heard rumors that this version of Black Ops 3 has more in common under the hood with the original Black Ops than its next-gen namesake. And while I've not been able to find much information to confirm nor deny that, it's a believable theory. Features like animated camos, character customization, and emotes are all missing, and you can't even see your legs when you look down, something Black Ops 3 finally implemented a decade after its peers. But like, whatever, right? These are cosmetic features, and truth told, we're probably better off without some of them. It's just one less avenue of invasive monetization. Surely these omissions could be written off as part of the effort to get Black Ops 3 looking and running as well as it could on the PS3, right? This game is an absolute technical nightmare. Frame rates on PS3 drop into the low teens, a complete lack of anti-aliasing results in jaggies sharp enough to cut diamonds, and texture detail is shown up by the original Xbox. Next gen got dedicated servers, the port didn't, resulting in laggy games, interruptions for host migration, and plenty of prematurely ended matches. Particle and gore effects have basically been removed entirely, vehicles are replaced with Modern Warfare 3 assets seemingly at random, and the characters' faces on the end screen are the stuff of nightmares. Not even the main menu runs right. The fully 3D backgrounds of the PS4 version are instead pre-rendered video here, except they still look like blurry, alias trash, and even then they manage to freeze the game to load every time you switch specialists. Last, but certainly not least, I'd like to present what may be the lowest quality textures shipped in a $60 game in the last decade. You'll want to be sitting down for this. The Xbox 360 version of this game came on 2 DVDs, and the PS3 came on a Blu-ray. There was no way in hell better quality PNGs couldn't be included, especially given that this game has far less content than its predecessors. Like I said, this game only got one DLC pack, it's still full price, and even if you were to purchase it, you'll likely never encounter other players that own it. Last gen never even got Nuketown. You know, Nuketown. The pre-order bonus that literally everybody on the next gen got, even if they didn't actually pre-order the game. The pre-order bonus that was available day one on disc for next gen. The Black Ops map, the same one that's so iconic that it's still being ported into the newest COD games a decade later. A map that could easily fit inside most of the other maps in this game at least twice. Not only was it not a free bonus, it wasn't even sold on last gen. Which feels pretty insulting given that they expected players to pay for an expansion pack despite not supporting the game in any meaningful way. Exploits long patched in older games resurface with a vengeance. I constantly encounter enemies with blue or green names, causing me to mistake them for friendlies and hesitate to shoot back. I originally thought these users had modded consoles, but looking closer I noticed the open bracket was white while the clan tag and closing bracket were colored, meaning these players somehow managed to use an exploit to get around the filter and use Quake 3 color codes in their clan tag. Yes, something that started as a tool for Quake server admins in 1999 was used to gain an advantage in a game released in 2015. I wouldn't call this exploit an egregious crime. That is reserved for the actual modders using actual cheats to ruin the fun for everyone else. This is possible for two reasons. One, the Xbox 360 and PS3 have unpatchable security flaws, which can't be helped. But what could have been helped was the game's use of peer-to-peer matchmaking instead of dedicated servers, which is the same design decision responsible for games like GTA Online being basically unplayable messes on PC and old consoles. As with every other COD game on these systems, cheaters are able to force the game to make them the host, granting them completely unchecked power over the lobby. There are some understandable justifications to mod old Call of Duty games, but aimbotting in the PS3 version of Black Ops 3 has to be one of the saddest ones I've seen yet. After playing this port, it is so painfully obvious that Activision had absolutely no interest in providing legacy consoles with anything resembling a proper experience. Perhaps giving the series the Assassin's Creed Rogue treatment would have been the best decision to make, but then again, that probably would have required more time and money than the pocket change they threw at this port. Look, y'all know the drill by now. This is the part where I'm supposed to say, but it's not that bad, and here's why it's actually impressive. But I'm not going to do that this time. It really is that bad. And it's not impressive in the slightest. There are games on both of these consoles that look better, run better, and usually both. Several of which are in this very series. This isn't the developer's fault. As with most ports like this, it falls solely on Activision leadership. Treyarch clearly knew this game was shaping up to be a dumpster fire and kept their distance, because their name is nowhere to be found either on or in the game. It's not on the box, it's not on the intro cinematic, the loading screen icon has been changed, and even the bot's 3-arc clan tag has been replaced with ATVI. I have absolutely no business speculating about what went on behind the scenes during this game's development, but this makes me think that Treyarch protested against Activision's insistence that Black Ops 3 be ported, and clearly they were right in doing so. This is the type of product that publishers should absolutely not be allowed to get away with, and in light of recent events, it seems they won't be in the future. But I will give this port credit and admit that it is a mostly tolerable, if barely playable, way to experience Black Ops 3, if you really, truly have no other way of doing so. The frame rate sucks, but you'll get used to it, especially if you already play most of your games on PS3. You can basically only play Team Deathmatch, but that's the case with all of these games at this point. The game looks like Vaseline smeared all over a 720p TV, but the gameplay is ultimately intact. Cheaters go unchecked, but the same is true of pretty much any last-gen multiplayer game. Black Ops 3 is far from my favorite COD game, but it's definitely aged better than Ghosts and Advanced Warfare. And while it is full of unnecessary bullshit, it has less unnecessary bullshit than its sequel. When it comes to getting your brain-smoothing multiplayer fix, you could certainly do worse in the gameplay department. You'll just have to decide for yourself if it's worth looking past all the glaring issues. 5 years on, and Call of Duty's identity crisis has more or less come to an end. There are still plenty of issues with the franchise to work through, but Infinity Ward and Treyarch seem to be embracing the themes, aesthetics, and principles that allowed Call of Duty to become the gaming staple it is. As for our two anti-heroes, Beanox is still working as a support studio for the Call of Duty franchise, while Mercenary, well, I genuinely have no idea. Their official website lists their most recent project as the Fantastic Beasts mobile game from 2016, and the copyright text at the bottom of the page hasn't been updated since 2018. But the company is still active on LinkedIn, and viewing their employee list led me to Bill Chin, their CEO, who includes developing Switch games as part of his job description, meaning that Mercenary is still operating as of sometime between 2017 and 2020. Even though I'm not entirely sure what Mercenary is up to these days, I do know what they did in the past, and there is one more piece of their history that deserves my attention. Those who've been following my community posts likely know this was not meant to be a New Year's upload, but instead the final upload of 2020. That obviously didn't happen thanks to an absolutely exhausting number of problems with Adobe Premiere. And I'm pretty bummed about it, but there's more. Despite doing literally everything I could to stay safe this year, I've got COVID. Here's hoping that everything turns out fine, but if it doesn't, I may put a pause on videos for a bit. I've got a lot of ideas burning a hole in my notepad right now and have quite a few things I'm really excited to work on, so hopefully nothing gets in the way of that. It's been a really tough couple weeks to round out an altogether rough year, but I'd just like to say thank you so much to all my patrons who've been supporting me and keeping me afloat during what's been the most tumultuous time I've lived through. My job still hasn't returned, and YouTube revenue is unreliable, so your Patreon dollars are how I've been buying groceries for the last few months. I'd also like to express how thankful I am for those of you who've been hanging out in the Discord, coming to the streams, and reaching out in messages recently. I didn't travel for Christmas, while my partner did, so I've spent the holidays isolated and now have to quarantine for even longer, and you lot have been keeping me sane. 2020 sucked on a global scale, but I did enjoy spending my newfound free time playing, writing, and creating, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Here's to a better, easier year, and I'll see you soon.